Government launches major campaign to clean up the city. 2 people are sentenced to over 5 years in jail for rioting. New quarantine measures for airport arrivals starting today. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. In an effort to combat the city's widespread public hygiene problems, the government has launched a major program tackling hygiene black spots. Authorities will also deploy nighttime anti-rodent teams to deal with the rising issue of rat infestations. Timothy Lee has the story.
In order to address the city's widespread public hygiene problems amid the ongoing pandemic, the government program tackling hygiene black spots was launched today. Headed by Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration, Warren Church, the District Matters Coordination Task Force is on a mission to clean up the city. The cross-department team is set to begin a 3-month operation to tackle more than 600 hygiene black spots. Authorities will focus on tackling 300 sites in particular to deal with the illegal dumping of rubbish. On the issue of worsening rat infestations, Secretary for Environment and Ecology, Wang Yi, said the government has established 19 mobile anti-rodent teams to respond to the crisis. Rat cages, however, will only be put out during the night so as to not present an obstacle to businesses during the day. Zhe added that rats are more active during the night, so the teams will set up traps with fresh bait to effectively attract the rats. But the 19-team strong pest control force will not extend their work to Hong Kong's 191 public housing estates. Instead, there will be surprise on-site checks examining the hygiene situation on the premises. The new program is comprised of 2 phases. Phase 1, targeting hygiene, is set to begin this Sunday. Phase 2 will begin in October and will focus on the beautification process of Hong Kong's cityscape.
The beautification of city landscape will start in 3 months' time. Part of it will be bringing out some of the characters of individual streets. And we are also contemplating bringing in murals in different districts with different motifs.
Besides targeting the city's hygiene black spots, the government will also enforce stricter hygienic measures in 4,000 locations, including country parks and public toilets. In addition, Warren Church said the government could begin a partial beautification process in Hong Kong streets in ways similar to Shenzhen. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
2 men who were found guilty of participating in a riot in Shanghai in 2019 were sentenced to 5.5 years in jail. The 2 were also charged with manslaughter over the death of a cleaner, although they were earlier found innocent of that charge. Caleb Leung has details.
The 2 defendants, Kelvin Lau and Chen Yinteng, arrived at the High Court today in a prison van. The case involved the death of a man during the anti-government protests in 2019. The incident happened on November 13th when a 70-year-old cleaner was hit on the head by a brick as 2 groups of people clashed. The 2 defendants were charged with manslaughter, but the jury acquitted the 2 of manslaughter, though they were found guilty of rioting. During her sentencing, High Court Judge Esther To said the 2 did not foresee the seriousness of their actions. She added that a deterrent sentence is required for riot cases. But the judge also gave consideration that the 2 were only 16 years old when the incident happened and lacked proper adult supervision, and accepted that they were remorseful. The judge sentenced the 2 to 5.5 years in jail. She also praised members of the public who removed the bricks and barriers placed on the roads as unsung heroes. She described their actions as selfless and fearless. The judge also commended the police for spending more than 1,000 hours investigating the case, describing the force as one of the world's finest. Meanwhile, a student who took part in the riot at Hong Kong Polytechnic University in 2019 was sentenced to a training center. The court heard that in November 2019, Li Ka-leung attempted to snatch a man who was subdued by the police at the entrance of the university. He admitted to 1 count of rioting last month. Li was earlier sentenced to a detention center for participating in an unlawful assembly in Ngau Tau Kok. The detention center order will be replaced by today's sentence. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Hong Kong logged 4,439 new COVID cases today, with local infections accounting for more than 4,200 cases. Another 4 COVID patients have died, including 1 female and 3 male patients aged between 80 and 82. Most of them suffered from chronic illness and one of them was unvaccinated. Authorities announced more than 200 more COVID patients have been hospitalized, including 23 children below the age of 3. The Castle Peak Hospital female ward infection cluster has expanded. Another 9 patients and 1 staff member contracted the virus, bringing the cluster's infection tally to 17. Meanwhile, 179 schools reported 214 positive cases. Starting today, inbound travelers from overseas and Taiwan can opt to undergo a shorter mandatory hotel quarantine period under the 3+4 scheme earlier announced by the government. The new arrangement requires travelers to have a 3-day hotel quarantine and 4 days of self-health monitoring. Those who test negative for COVID will be allowed to leave quarantine hotels after day 3. They will then be issued with an amber health code. If they obtain negative results for their daily rapid antigen tests, they can go to work and school in some premises such as shopping malls and markets, but they will be barred from entering venues which are required to check vaccination records, including eateries and bars. Some returnees said they welcome the easing of the measures.
3 days, I think it's manageable, because in the old days we needed to do 21 days, right? And then it was shortened to 7 days. I think opening up Hong Kong to the international travelers, I think that's going to contribute significantly to our economy in Hong Kong. So I welcome that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is a risk-based approach by the government, and I welcome that.
The Labour Department issued a protocol that says employers should allow workers who hold an amber code to work during their medical surveillance. Employers who force them to take days off without appropriate reasons may breach discrimination laws.
The city's latest quarantine arrangements require international arrivals to complete 3 days of hotel quarantine, followed by 4 days of medical surveillance at home. Within that 4 days, amber code holders are allowed to go to work. The Labour Department issued new guidelines today, saying employers should let employees holding an amber code go to work during their medical surveillance period. They must follow strict COVID rules such as dining alone and wearing face masks. The protocol also noted if an employer cannot arrange these workers to work because of additional rules for individual premises, they should still pay them the wages they would have been paid during that period of time. Also, employers cannot deduct any holidays they're entitled to under the employment ordinance, such as annual leave. The arrangement also applies to foreign domestic helpers. There are also guidelines for what to do with infected employees with the red code. For those employed under a continuous contract, if they are absent from work in order to comply with an isolation order, they should be deemed as taking sick leave and are entitled to sickness allowance. The Equal Opportunities Commission added if employers mistreat amber code employees, such as forcing them to take days off, they may breach the disability discrimination ordinance. Employers may also violate the law if they lay off an employee for being infected. In a protocol issued by the Education Bureau, students or teaching staff with an amber code are not allowed to join any mask-off activities at school, such as playing woodwind instruments, football or basketball. Meanwhile, amber code holders can only enter judiciary premises if they test negative using RAT tests. Starting Monday, amber code holders attending court hearings who may have to speak with their masks off should alert judicial officers beforehand and may have to present an image of the RAT outcome of the day.
The Baltic countries of Latvia and Estonia have left a China-backed forum involving Eastern European countries. The two countries issued statements after pulling out of the cooperation framework of Central and Eastern European countries and China. Latvia's foreign ministry said the country will continue to strive for constructive and pragmatic relations with China, both bilaterally and through EU-China cooperation, based on mutual benefit, respect for international law, human rights and the international rules-based order. Beijing's relations with another Baltic state, Lithuania, have recently been strained due to its bid to expand ties with Taiwan. After concluding his recent diplomatic visits, State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi again criticized U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Wang made the comments in an interview with mainland media. Wang said Pelosi violated the commitments made by the U.S. government to China on the Taiwan issue. He said Beijing's countermeasures to Pelosi's visit are justified, reasonable, necessary, and appropriate. Still ahead on tonight's news, city's economy continues to shrink in the last quarter. Reports say FBI searched Donald Trump's home looking for nuclear-related information. And South Korea pardons former Samsung executive so he can help stimulate the economy. Welcome to TVB News. The government has forecast a possible contraction in Hong Kong's economy this year. This as the city's latest quarterly year-on-year gross domestic product shrinks 1.3%. Christy Khan reports.
Hong Kong saw a second straight quarter of economic contraction, with its second quarter GDP down 1.3% compared with the same period last year. The government now forecasts the city's GDP this year to either contract or expand within a range of negative 0.5% to 0.5%, which is more pessimistic than its forecast in May. Officials attributed the change of view to global economic prospects, including high inflation, as well as the poor local economic performance in the first half of the year. The prolonged COVID pandemic has weakened global demand and disrupted cross-boundary transports, and this affected the city's export performance in the second quarter. But government economists at Latvia said the easing of some border control measures will help boost Hong Kong's economy, as it will attract more foreign talent to work in the city. He also expressed optimism about the economy in the second half of the year.
We recorded 2 quarters of year-on-year contraction, but if you look at the quarter-to-quarter change, in fact, we recorded a expansion in the second quarter. So in fact, the economy is improving, and we are also expecting that economic growth in the second quarter will accelerate. So I don't really think this is a recession scenario.
Learn added the expected revival of the mainland economy in the second half of the year will help shore up Hong Kong's exports, but it won't be able to totally offset the impact of the deteriorating global economy. Christy Khan, TVB News.
A new research found each Hong Kong employee's MPF account lost over $400 on average last month. A Gain Miles Assurance Consultant survey shows the overall return for MPF in July was negative 0.2%. That's equivalent to $461 in each employee's MPF account on average. The MPF Scheme Authority stressed MPF is a long-term investment and will inevitably experience different economic cycles and urged the public not to be overwhelmed by the short-term fluctuations. Overseas, former U.S. President Donald Trump has demanded the immediate release of the federal warrant used by the FBI to search his Florida estate. His call came after the Justice Department made the unprecedented move of asking a court to unseal the warrant. Nazvi Karim reports.
How do you feel, Mr. Trump? How do you feel?
Is Donald Trump playing the part of someone who feels victimized and has nothing to hide? While the U.S. Justice Department seems to be on a public relations recovery campaign, hoping Americans will realize the truth if they are told why the FBI earlier this week searched the former president's Mar-a-Lago estate. Warrants usually remain sealed to prevent speculation in the event that the subject of that search is subsequently cleared by investigators. But U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland said Trump's public statement that his estate was searched and his verbal attacks on the FBI persuaded him to call for the warrants to be unsealed.
The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter. Let me address recent unfounded attacks on the professionalism of the FBI and Justice Department agents and prosecutors. I will not stand by silently when their integrity is unfairly attacked.
Trump, who called the FBI search un-American, unwarranted and unnecessary, posted on his Truth Social platform that not only will I not oppose the release of documents, I am going a step further by encouraging the immediate release of those documents. As speculation intensified over what the documents will reveal, the Washington Post reports that it has to do with nuclear weapons. Such claims have yet to be verified, but what most analysts expect, if the documents are released by a judge, could be the disclosure of unflattering information about Trump ahead of a potential second run at the White House. Whatever the case, Garland's request breaks new legal ground.
Completely unprecedented. It's really historically shocking. It's hard to kind of understate how shocking it is from a historical perspective, because you are executing a search warrant on a former sitting president. It's pretty remarkable, and what's already a remarkable story, because it's fairly unprecedented for the DOJ to release a warrant or an affidavit with a case that is still, quote unquote, pending.
Nazri Karim, TVB News.
In Ohio, a gunman who attempted to break into an FBI building was shot dead by police. More from NBC News.
Tonight in Ohio, a violent hours-long standoff is over after authorities cornered a man who tried to break into the FBI building in Cincinnati.
He's succumbed to his injuries at the scene.
At 9:15 this morning, the man entered the visitor screening area of the FBI field office, wielding an AR-15 style rifle and a nail gun, which he fired at people, according to two law enforcement sources. The suspect then fled in his car, speeding off onto the interstate. At 9:37, state police tried to stop the car, but couldn't, leading to a chase through country roads.
Subject supposed to be armed with body armor, fired several shots at officers.
The standoff in a cornfield lasted for hours, with more reports of gunfire.
Once the vehicle came to a stop, gunfire was exchanged between officers on scene and the suspect.
Residents were told to stay inside, and the highway was shut down in both directions. The suspect's motive is unknown, but the incident took place 2 days after federal agents searched Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. FBI Director Christopher Wray was asked yesterday if he was worried the search could trigger retaliation against the FBI.
Any threats made against law enforcement, including the men and women of the FBI, as with any law enforcement agency, are deplorable and dangerous.
Some Republicans responded to the search warrant with calls to take down the agency, including one congressman who tweeted, "We must destroy the FBI," while online some extremists made direct threats. Meanwhile, in Ohio, relief that a dangerous confrontation is over. State police say no law enforcement were injured.
U.S. President Joe Biden's gearing up for a potential rematch with Donald Trump in the 2024 elections, according to a Bloomberg report. Citing aides and allies, the report said Biden will start to prepare his bid for a second term as president after November's congressional elections. Despite polls showing most Democrats prefer another candidate, the 79-year-old Biden is apparently encouraged by recent legislative, economic, and foreign policy victories. Bloomberg quoted longtime aide Anita Dunn as saying that the president is planning on running again. Elsewhere, Samsung's vice chairman Lee Jae-yong will be formally pardoned by South Korea's president 1 year after he was released on parole from a prison sentence for bribing former President Park Geun-hye. Daniel Rao tells us more.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol will pardon 1,700 people on Monday, which is a national holiday celebrating Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule at the end of World War II. Among those to be formally pardoned will be Samsung's vice chairman Lee Jae-yong, who is regarded as the group's heir apparent. This comes just 1 year after he was released on parole from a prison sentence for bribing former South Korean President Park Geun-hye. The sentence was part of a huge corruption scandal that eventually led to the downfall of Park's government. Lotte Group chairman Shin Dong-bin and other top business leaders will also be pardoned. Shin received a suspended prison term in 2018 for bribing Park, who then President Moon Jae-in pardoned last December. Justice Minister Han Dong-hoon said the pardons aim to help South Korea overcome its economic crisis through encouraging business activity. Business leaders and politicians had earlier called for Lee's pardon. They argued it would allow Samsung to be bolder and quicker in business decisions. Lee runs the Samsung Group as vice chairman of Samsung Electronics. The company is one of the largest computer memory chip and smartphone makers in the world. In a statement released through Samsung, Li expressed his sincere gratitude for receiving an opportunity to start anew. However, he still faces a separate trial on charges of stock price manipulation and auditing violations. The pardons were criticized by a coalition of civic groups. They accused the president of cozying up to the family-owned conglomerates that dominate South Korea's economy. Daniel Roll, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thanks for watching.